yesterday's session, well, there were questions introduced this morning. We had a working session this morning where we talked about and we covered some of the questions, but some of the questions were uncovered this morning, especially questions regarding the session 2 from yesterday, the epidemiology and dose evaluation. So therefore, some experts from epidemiology, from Professor Mori, was also uncovered. There are many. The question is regarding whether there are many thyroid cancer. That is, in Chernobyl, it was the case that they were covered 4 or 5 years after the Chernobyl accident. We have not seen the situation in Japan yet.
Because there's a certain latent period for the cancer to develop. However, there may be the possibility for the person to develop cancer earlier than the usual latent period. Therefore, I'd like to ask this question to Dr. Hoffman, by the way, but he is not here. Anyway, this is a question from Dr. Mori. I have a kind of a follow-up question about this. That is, let me answer to that briefly, if you don't mind. Yes, but wait for a minute. There are some other comments. Dr. Muso has conducted extensive animal studies as well as Dr. Otaki has conducted similar animal tests. There are higher impact from the high dose area. However, how about the low dose area? In case of human being, longevity of a human being is longer than the animals. In case of low dose, maybe the animals don't develop any detrimental impact because the dose is too low. However, if there's no impact from the low dose radiation, if the animal have any negative impact, not for that generation, but the offspring generations, such an impact can be caused by the low dose radiation for an animal. I'd like to ask these questions to Dr. Hoffman as well as other experts. I'm Mori from Mie University. Nice to meet you. My question is basically analysis of Dr. Tsuda is reliable enough. Therefore, as there's a causal relationship in the epidemiology context, I don't have any question about it. It's clear enough. However, in 1 year or 2, excessive incident of thyroid cancer happens, then if you think about the usual, the thyroid cancer, such as the papillary cancer, it's said that the progress is slow. The growth pace of that subtype of thyroid cancer is slow. However, compared to this past cumulative findings, the current thyroid cancer seems different. And radioactive iode may cause the excessive incidence of some types of cancers, which is different from past findings. For instance, malignancy would be different from usual cancers. Therefore, if you happen to know this information, I'd like you to share it. For example, 5-year survival rate of Chernobyl survivors can tell me a certain degree of expertise. However, if you know some the information about this, I'd like you to share your insights. First of all, Sebastian, do you have any information or data for these questions from Dr. Molly?
Ich erinnere mich an die Zeit nach Tschernobyl. Dort gab es an diesem Punkt auch Diskussionen.
After Chernobyl accident, there were discussions. I still remember
die Anzahl der Schilddrüsenerkrankungen ging in die Höhe, nicht nur Schilddrüsenkrebs, auch andere Schilddrüsenerkrankungen.
Not only thyroid cancer, but the thyroid diseases are increased after
Aber die
the
Kollegen
incident
aus der
of
westlichen Welt
Chernobyl.
haben gesagt, das passiert viel zu früh, das kann nichts mit Tschernobyl zu tun haben.
However, in Western Europe, researchers say that it's too early for a cancer to develop. So it's not, or it may not due to the
Jetzt
Chernobyl
haben wir
accident, as you
wieder
mentioned.
eine nukleare Katastrophe, die etwas anders aussieht als Tschernobyl.
This time, Fukushima accident is different from
Und es könnte sein,
Chernobyl
dass wir wieder
accident, in
etwas
my view.
dazu lernen müssen, in welcher Form und in welcher Form sich die Krankheiten entwickeln, die das ausgelöst hat.
However, this type of diseases progress in what type of pathway. This time, we have to learn new aspects.
Bisher sind nahezu alle Prognosen über die zu erwartenden Folgen von Katastrophen falsch gewesen.
So far, when a nuclear accident happened, there is an expected pathway,
Deshalb würde ich
and
zunächst
I
mal
believe
vorschlagen, zu sehen, was
everything
jetzt passiert.
is wrong.
Diese ganze Geschichte mit
Well,
den
we have to
Erkrankungen
shed a
nach
new light
Fukushima,
to
die
review
ist
those
ja erst
aspects.
im Beginn und man kann noch nicht so richtig genau sagen, was passiert.
Post-Fukushima, thyroid diseases, research has just started. Therefore, it's too early for us to say something very clearly. What we can do is to pay a very close
Es
eye
gibt
on
vielleicht einen
how
Weg, wie man
things will
die
develop
Diskussion
in the
voranbringen
future.
könnte. Es gibt in Deutschland einen Professor, der hat genetische Untersuchungen an Schilddrüsengewebe gemacht.
Among German experts, there is an organization studying genetics or genes related to
Und er hat gefunden, dass
thyroid
bestimmte
cancer.
Veränderungen in der DNS darauf hindeuten, dass dieser Schilddrüsenkrebs durch Strahlen verursacht worden ist.
He says DNA on gene has a mutation, and therefore radiation causes cancer.
Es bestünde
This
die
is his
Möglichkeit, dass in
conclusion.
Deutschland solche Untersuchungen gemacht werden. Wir müssten bloß zu diesem Schilddrüsengewebe kommen und das vernünftig organisieren.
If this has been verified in Germany, we want to have the tissues used for this study to look into thyroid cancer. We have to re-examine whether it's true or not.
はい。
How about you, Dr. Hoffman? What's your view on this?
To the survey of 2010-2011, there were some 120,000 children below 15 years were screened, and 11 cases of of thyroid cancers in this age group were found. This would already be too much. So we would expect 0.1 to 1 case based on German cancer registry numbers. So this would be compatible with an increase similar to that we observed after Chernobyl. And I do hope that, let's say, that this is not the beginning of something, such a steep increase as we saw in Chernobyl. Next year we will know more, but it is already wrong if somebody says that there is no effect that is visible. So you can already see something.
Careful
Dr. Webert?
because there is a very big screening effect. If you look for thyroid cancer, you will find it more easily than almost any other cancer that we can screen for. So I would be a little cautious for the next, say, 3 years. If the experience that occurred in Chernobyl is repeated, then we will see the cancers appearing by then. I tend to think that there may not be as strong an effect, because the iodine in thyroid, there's no goiter in Japan because of the seafood diet. And that was a factor, definitely, in the Chernobyl cases. So I would be extremely cautious at this time in making any predictions about whether there's going to be a large increase. Also, the cases that have occurred, if I understand it correctly, they're not what we expect from radiation. We would expect to see very young children affected before we saw older children. And at the moment, my understanding is that it's not young children, it's teenagers that we are seeing these cases. So it doesn't look like it's normal. It may be a screening effect, but it's, I think, too early to say.
Thank you very much. How about you, Dr. Tsuda? Dr. Mori said, in your definition, you believe that thyroid cancer will be rampant in the 10 years and 15 years. However, I have to ask you, what is the sample size when you talk about, say it? I mean, in case of Chernobyl, the higher instant within 5 years after Chernobyl accidents, we cannot see such a phenomena unless huge number of people was exposed, and this happened for the first time in the history in Chernobyl because of the breakout of the technology. The huge number of people was exposed. Without that, we cannot see such phenomena, and Chernobyl accident is the first opportunity for us to see it. So the Chernobyl accident elucidated it, and as to the sample size, the size of sample is the same as in Chernobyl accident, meaning that almost the same number of people in Fukushima was exposed to the radiation. Therefore, within 5 to 10 years, higher frequency sample size are very different. Do you believe in the studies with smaller sample sizes or the one with the bigger sample sizes? Depending on that, your frequency rate interpretation might be different.
Herrn Beverstock etwas widersprechen. Diese Geschichte mit dem Screening-Effekt stört mich. Das ist ein Argument, was auch nach Tschernobyl immer wieder gebraucht wurde.
I have a different opinion from Dr. Weberstock. As to the screening effect, it was frequently discussed even after Chernobyl accident.
Mehr Krankheiten findet, wenn man sorgfältiger hinguckt.
If you look into the details, you can find more instances
Das
for a
kann
certain
eine
disease.
gute Ausrede werden.
But be careful. There's a caveat because it can be used for an excuse.
Also insbesondere bei Schilddrüsenkrebs, bei Kindern und jungen Leuten würde ich es für unwahrscheinlich halten, dass man durch sorgfältigeres Untersuchen diese Krebse findet.
Children, the youth, the thyroid cancer for these young generations should get careful attention, and because of the careful
Schilddrüsenkrebs
attention
ist
to those
normalerweise eine
age groups,
Erkrankung von alten
that's why we
Leuten
have
und da
found
verläuft
more
das sehr
cases.
langsam.
No, I don't think so. It's not true. Usually, thyroid cancer happens to the elderly, and then in case of the elderly, the thyroid
Und
cancer
viele ältere
grows
Leute
very
sterben mit
slowly.
Schilddrüsenkrebs und merken das überhaupt nicht.
Many elderly people live by coping with the thyroid cancer, they still have a thyroid cancer. However,
Also wenn
sometimes
man da
it's
viele alte Leute
asymptomatic and
untersucht,
they
dann
don't
findet
have
man
any
auch viele
subjective symptoms.
Schilddrüsenkrebsfälle, die man
And
sonst
they
gar nicht
die
bemerkt hat.
without knowing that they have developed thyroid cancer. Therefore, if you examine many elderly people, you can find many cases of
Aber bei
thyroid
Kindern und
cancer
jungen
with
Leuten ist das anders. Da ist der Verlauf des Schilddrüsenkrebses viel aggressiver und schneller.
But in case of children and the youth, progress of thyroid cancer is totally different from the elderly. I would say it's very aggressive. The thyroid cancer
Diese jungen Leute,
does
die
not have
landen
any
immer beim
slow
Arzt.
pace to grow. Therefore, once young people develop thyroid cancer, the youth and the children have to go to see a
Und die müssen
doctor
dann auch
to
schnell
get a
gut behandelt
treatment.
werden.
Once children or the youth develop thyroid cancer, they have to be brought to a hospital as early as possible.
Aber
Therefore,
erst mal
early
gucken
intervention should be
und
provided
jetzt noch
as soon as possible.
keine lauten Thesen machen über Schilddrüsenkrebs, das finde ich schon richtig.
Of course. First of all, firm observation should be performed, but we should not make any fuss about thyroid cancer and so on. Rather, we have to have really level-headed observations that if any suspicious symptoms identified for the youth, you have to bring them to see a doctor as soon as possible.
In case of health and medical checkups and consultations, when I talk about with people who are evacuees or who are affected by the Fukushima accident, and when they discover thyroid cancer, usually the general understanding today is that their 90% survival rate after 5 years of the detection of thyroid cancer, that the progression is very slow. That is the basic general understanding based on which the consultations are made. But if we have that kind of conceived notion when regarding thyroid cancer, I think this is we should be extremely careful when we communicate with the evacuees or the afflicted people about thyroid cancer. What should be our basis, and how what should be our perspective in talking about this? And that is why I think it's an important matter to discuss. Do you have any other comments? Anyone else? Mr. Iwata. Well, I have a question to Dr. Sakiyama and Dr. Beverstock. I would like to know if there is a possible explanation from epigenetical point of view or from a genetical point of view that after 1 or 2 years there could be a progression to full solid thyroid cancer. Is an explanation of such possible? That's a question for the two, Dr. Sakiyama and Dr. Beverstock.
Progression from what? Just from the exposed thyroid?
何からの
Just the grow. Is it?
I'm not sure I understand what the question is
You
exactly.
can explain if the thyroid cancer will grow in 1 or 2 years.
Well, I mean, the situation in Chernobyl was that there was relatively little screening in the very early years. They didn't have the equipment to do it. But they did detect over 100 cases in Minsk were operated in Minsk. So they didn't all come from Minsk. They came from Belarus, but they were operated in Minsk. And by 1992, there were over 100 registered cases with full pathology, and mostly those weren't detected by screening. They were detected by palpation, and they were children that were either examined in school or they were brought by their parents to the doctors. And those cases were mostly under 14 years of age. And as I say, there were over 100 of them at that time. That's 1992, so that's 6 years. And if you project back the annual numbers of cases, the line comes down and meets the zero, if you like, the axis, at just under 4 years. So the latency, minimum latency, looks like it's 4 years. Now, there were very few cases which occurred before that. Let's say a sporadic number of cases that occurred before that. But in 4 years' time, it ought to be clear, or in 5 years' time, it ought to be clear that there is a problem or not. And that's what I'm suggesting. We don't alarm people until we know what the situation is. Now, it's possible that it won't appear in quite the same way. But my understanding is that all the children that are at risk and in that relevant age groups are being examined, screened. When you do that, the first time you do it, you pick up cases which are, if you like, subclinical. You don't quite see them in the symptoms of the child, but you can detect it with the screening. You can detect nodules of 2 or 3 millimeters, which is very small. Those are not, they don't produce symptoms at that stage. So that's what I meant by the screening effect. There will be picking up anything in the population. When it comes to the second screening of the group, then they won't, the picture will be clearer. That's the only point I was making. I don't see that it's making an excuse. It's the fact that I don't expect that that disease will occur any more quickly here than it did in Chernobyl. I have no reason to assume that it would. So I suspect that there may be some abnormalities that have been picked up. It'd be interesting to find out what those are. Whether they're due to the radiation or not, we still would have to work out. I don't think, in my view, contrary to what Sebastian said about the result in Germany, I don't know that result, but I know an enormous number of studies which have shown that there is no relationship between a specific mutation and the radiation-induced thyroid cancer. They've looked very hard to find that for obvious reasons, because if you could say this case was due to radiation, but that case was not, you would have a basis for compensation. And the people who pay the compensation are very, very, very keen to have that. And it's been one remarkable feature of the Chernobyl experience that although we have all these children who have definitely radiation-induced cancer, not one single molecular marker has been found, as far as I know.
すみません。ちょっと質問。
I didn't articulate my question. That's why I got a different answer. I know that the growth of thyroid cancer is slow. However, in 1 year or 2, as a mechanism of biology, is that possible for a thyroid cancer to be a full-fledged solid cancer? Is that plausible for a thyroid cancer to grow that mature level in a year or 2? Because I don't know it. Therefore, please educate me. Just 1 year or 2 is enough for a thyroid cancer to be a full-fledged mature cancer. I don't think it's proven. However, slow progressing cancer is applied to only adult cancers. Therefore, the confusion occurring right now is to apply the adult hypothesis or adult situation to the child case. For example, there are latent cancers identified in many cases, but this is only for adults, not for children. Therefore, actually, as you've seen from the chief, of the epidemic diseases center, the progression is different. And it seems that same situation is now happening in Fukushima. You don't force the known mechanism forcibly to what's happening in Fukushima. Even if you try to do it, you cannot do it. What you see as observation should be the basis all the time. Therefore, you should not forcibly apply the mechanism to what happening on the field. Now, in the 1991 onward, Dr. Yamashita and his colleagues has performed screening for thyroid cancer, and it's already hit, or Fukushima already hit the detection rate hit by the Chernobyl accident. This is a question to Dr. Vivastok. In case of Chernobyl, as a member of WHO, you went there in an accident. There are some people who are not close to Chernobyl, but fetus have developed thyroid cancer. Radiation was irradiated to the embryo inside the womb. Still, the thyroid cancer happened later phase. Therefore, if you happen to know when those embryo or fetus has developed thyroid cancer, can you please tell the age to me?
The age could be any age. The interesting thing was that the highest sensitivity was in the children of exposed after birth, not in the fetuses. The sensitivity of the fetus was about less than half, I think, the sensitivity of the less than 1 year old child. So the fetus to some extent seems to be protected. But as far as when the cancer will occur, it's not, it could be 4 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 40 years, it could be even 60 years. So the sensitivity is determined by the age at exposure, but that doesn't determine when the cancer will actually appear. So there are cancers appearing now in the children exposed as children 25, 27 years ago, however long it is. Those cancers are still appearing, but they are diluted by the naturally occurring cancers, of which there are, of course, much more, because the incidence of thyroid cancer increases quite dramatically after the age of about 10. So it starts to go up, and when you get to late teenage and early 20s, it's quite a lot higher than it is for the very young children.
We all agree on this, on the facts that there cannot be any firm conclusion at this point in time. My point was that it is compatible with a similar increase as we saw after Chernobyl. So it is no option to say that there is nothing that can be observed at this point in time. So there is something that can be observed, but we are not sure about the meaning, and of course we cannot be sure about what happens next year and the year after next year. So the conclusion for me would be to continue the screening, use the best possible equipment, and try to find any child that is affected in order to put the best treatment to this child and give him the best chances to survive.
In yesterday's presentation, I'd like to point out the matter. Please look at page 8 of yesterday's presentation. Screening data actually are quite numerous if you just look for them. In the University of Okayama, since 2012, we have been undertaking
screening for thyroid cancer to all new students who enter the University of Okayama. That's what we are doing. And also the Chiba University has also undertaken all the entire student population, 10,000 of them, the screening for cancer. That was 2000. In the University of Okayama, we have found from the entire subject 3 cases of thyroid cancer. In case of Chiba University, the whole total population subjected was 9,988, and they also found 3 patients who with thyroid cancer. So we just have to look at these numbers and compare. But the problem is that they're a slightly different age, a completely different age group. And we can say that for thyroid cancer, it is said that the risk exponentially grows every 3 years. So age adjustment is indispensable when we compare these data for thyroid cancer. So if we make age adjustment, then we understand this, that from Okayama University, detection rate actually is much lower if we compare with Motomiya City or Nihonmatsu City. So from the currently available data, it seems like there is a multiple occurrence of thyroid cancer. And since 1991 in Chernobyl, the Professor Yamashita's team has also undertaken screening, and we have also the findings from these activities as well. But if you compare to the Chernobyl data, we already have the same incidence of thyroid cancer to even now today compared to the Chernobyl data, and that cannot be explained simply by screening effect. So in that sense, as Professor Hoffman stated, there is really no point in talking about whether or not there's a causal effect. Every time there's a data, we need to take into consideration various perspectives and compare the data with the existing data. And by doing so, we can have a common understanding about the changes. If we continue to talk about whether or not there's a causal effect or not, causal relationship or not, that does not the discussion. We need to look at the data that's available, and we need to come to a common understanding about how to interpret that. This issue led to a quite lively debate. And how about the research about on animals? And I have a question actually, particularly about such research, especially about the butterflies, the pale blue grass butterfly. Professor Otaki mentioned that there was not so much abnormalities at the low dose radiation, but in case of such butterfly, their longevity is very, very short. So maybe it's possible that we can't observe a long-term effect, or it is very hard to detect such long-term effects of low dose of radiation. So if we were to compare humans with animals, and then Mr. Otaki, Professor Otaki, talked about the fact that they tried to get these samplings at the high radiation areas, but I'd like to know more about that. Professor Musso or Professor Otaki, maybe if you could add.
You know, I think the key issue. Testing 1, 2, 3. The key issue is whether or not the scientific method is employed in a rigorous manner that allows one to define the range of possibilities that can be measured, can be detected. I think it's the same question with the thyroid screening. I think if the study is conducted in a well-defined manner, aimed at. So medicine must be evidence-based. It must be conducted with proper scientific rigor. And the same is true for the animal studies. And of course, the major limitation to the proper study is the resources, are the resources devoted to conducting the studies. So the main limitation to the butterfly study, the main limitation to the thyroid screening studies, the main limitation to our work on birds and insects is the number of people involved, the areas that can be accessed, the number of yen that are devoted to conducting the studies. Once we've decided that this is a priority, if it is a priority, then there must be, the investments must be made to do the work properly. There's no point in doing the study in a bad way, in a minimalist way, because this provides actually this uncertainty. It fuels this uncertainty that causes the population to be worried. If we had conducted the screenings in a rigorous way with proper controls, we would know whether this was a screening effect. If Dr. Otaki had had a grant from the Japanese government to continue his butterfly work, we would have had samples from many different high contamination areas and many different low contamination areas, and we would have a much better answer to these questions. And so I think this is the main issue that needs to be addressed. If we want answers, we need to invest in that pursuit.
So Otaki?
I think question included concern on the low exposure level. I don't remember if I mentioned that there is no detectable effect if it is the low exposure on the tested body. We did some experiments like the internal and external exposures, and we got animals from Okinawa and also Iitate, Hirono, and other highly contaminated areas in Fukushima Prefecture. It is quite subjective to consider if that area has highly contaminated or not. So I'm not going to mention. And of course, in general, the animals, the expected life duration is much shorter the higher the level becomes. But we do found animals' mortalities in the low-level exposure area. So what do we see from this evidence? And then there are all the designated evacuation areas, and then we got some animals even from outside of those designated evacuation areas. And we did find effects on the animals and also some dose at the exposure level from the animals. Talking about the epidemiological study of the, of course, that we do the animal testing or the animal examinations because we cannot do the same kind of examinations, experiment, and testing on the people. But of course, that the older endocrine system, the physical conditions of the each bodies are different, and they're different from human. And but there are good points that we can gain some positive suggestions from these experiments. So we need to make mutually supportive for the biological studies and human health studies. I think it's possible. have all this data. However, we do not know how to interpret them. And some people say this is not the fully scientific in that level, in that concern. I mean, scientifically, this is not very rigid data. But what can we do to make it more useful for scientific level? I've been talking about so much about the sample size and the factors of the experiment. That, of course, you need for the full monitoring, scientific monitoring, meaning that you need to do the scientific monitoring. Of course, we can apply certain result of this sampling and monitoring on the human health. But if we take that much effort and time, then we prefer to monitor human and doing the screening on the human health. Angelica? 福島の清掃労働者についてです、原発。
This is one of the big groups that had a high exposure risk and a high disease risk. TEPCO does not want that we talk about them, and they hide, this is what I read in the newspapers, that TEPCO hid the facts and the numbers of the workers that were exposed to the UNSCARE and to WHO. The government doesn't want that we talk about them, and I wonder when is the place that we talk about them here.
はい、そうですね、今日の朝日新聞
Asahi newspaper it also discussed about this, the health management of the cleaners and the workers within the site of Fukushima Daiichi. Because they are subcontractors or subcontractors, they cannot grasp the actual status of these people. That is a problematic issue that the newspaper reported. So I would like to move to the next topic, that is so-called KKK or Triple K, the Fukushima People's Health Management Survey. So I'd like to move into that topic. Is it all right, everyone? Now, what kind of things is being done in Fukushima Medical University? Of course, in this case, in cooperation with the government. Mr. Segawa should be talking about this. And then I would like to have Yoshida to follow, who is very knowledgeable about the Chernobyl case. And then Barosok and Angelica should be presenting your proposals. Thank you. Segawa first. I did not prepare any kind of title. Is the here, Fukushima, the structure of radioactive medicine and survey limited to Fukushima. There are 33, this is limited to the 33 cities and towns in Fukushima Prefecture. That was pointed out, I think, in yesterday's discussion. But there is the other wider cases that we shall look into. in terms of the research and the limitations. I would like to talk about what are the concern in terms of their systems and the mechanisms. And of course, we talked so much about the many health management surveys, not only KKKs. They are very limited. They have a lot of terms of conditions. Yeah. You see the white, that's totally abolished now, or that's disappeared now. There is another building, white building. They don't exist now. This is the biggest building. However, this is just a design photo. They will be constructing this later in the future. This is basic blueprint of the present building. You see the reddish or the orange floors. The 7th and 8th floor. This will be center for prefecture populations health management. So, which means that when building is built, that when we say triple K, we just say the prefecture population center. That's only the part of that the health management survey, and the yellow part. These are for treatment. Of course, this is the facility of the Medical University of Fukushima Prefecture. Therefore, they have to provide medical treatment. So this is the plan that will be maybe established 2 years later, the April 2015. And the 30 billion yen is the budget for this program. This is not, the funder of this budget is not the Fukushima Prefecture. Then the government just shoulder this part. And some will be paid back through their operations. So I think this is really, I can say, shock doctrine. I think you understand this means. This is like when there was a disasters or the war, there are the people who just make billions of money. They become very rich. So this is Fukushima doctrine, shock doctrine. This kind of money making programs is happening.
The blue paper represents the Fukushima Medical University, and this is the KKK, and this is the Advanced Medicine Center. And this is the Medical Industrial Translational Research Center. These are the centers involving this issue, and each center has a specific organizational structure. For example, upper part is focusing on the study of the current health status. They try to form the database, and there's a really good, solid epidemiology department, and there's another department in charge of risk communication. The name of Lilipat, you see the name of center, by the way. And this is the clinical study center, PET, CT, and cyclotron, which is a nuclear medicine. So medical radiation can be studied more, and these equipments cost very expensive. One unit will cost about 500 million yen. Hiroshima University, the medical research center, is collaborating with these centers because it's so expensive. Now this is examination treatment, and this is a center for treating children and mothers, and the emergency center is established. Thyroid diseases center is established. So at a glance, it's impeccable because everyone has misgivings. Therefore, in order to eliminate those worries, that's why this kind of center is established. Now, this is a medical industrial translational center in which the medical companies as well as the pharmaceutical companies get together to provide the studies. And in addition to that, because this is a university educational institution, therefore they try to nurture the future generation of human assets who can be the successor of Dr. Yamashita. And why this has a problem? If we see any problems in this structure, we have to speak up. There are problems because many people believe that if it's newer, the better. For example, early intervention for the cancer, it's better. This is a preoccupation in the medical society in Japan. Fukushima has been left behind to other areas in Japan, but they believe that with this advanced center, they can make Fukushima move forward. However, there is no precedent across Japan. In addition to that, many people were exposed. Therefore, they are the experimental animal in one sense. So they are a kind of a guinea pig, how much they can do in the research area. Therefore, we believe there are some skewed area, for example, human resources as well as scientific grants. We have to have as wide perspectives as possible. Data is very important, human resources are very important. However, a study based on a certain hypothesis is very important. And in this aspect, I don't know how much this center is effective. I have to raise this issue, and I'd like to conclude this session, or to conclude my presentation with this problem. Thank you very much. Radiation victims must have some detrimental impact on their health. However, a study on that is not sufficient. As some critics say, action for that is very slow, and I would say there is no action at all. Instead of that, huge amount of resources have been invested into this advanced research center, and you aptly pointed out that unbalanced approach of the government of Japan. Now, I'd like to ask Mr. Yoshida to talk about the comparison against the Chernobyl accident, and I want you to talk about the current status of the study of Japan. Thank you very much. I'm Yoshida from this organization. The active protection of children in Russia.
So we have been working together about the over generations effect from the Chernobyl, and working together with the Russian radiation effect protection center. At the time of the nuclear power plant disaster, when we talk about what do we need, what do we have to do, then to protect children, both in the legal aspects and at the same time social aspect and then the health aspect at the same time. There are a lot of support needed to for the better environment for children, and that should be integrated into the effective medical examination and care. In Russia, in 1991, there was a special presidential program in Russia called the Chernobyl Children, and this will be developed later as Chernobyl law. And there are three. The first, at the level of the district, state, and the federal, this is three-strata level technical infrastructure, shall be strengthened. The first of all, provided that there is some potential risk, health risk, then we need to train the medical personnel. As I said before, this three-strata system of the district, region, and federation shall be the main body for this service and implementation of programs. So-called recreation programs for the rehabilitation throughout the year. This will be the year-round programs shall be planned and implemented. The multiple government ministries, agencies, and research institutions are involved in finalizing these programs and implementation. So one of a way to finalize these programs and the plan of Clinical Research Center for Radioactive Protection of Children was planned. Of course, pediatricians naturally took initiatives for the planning and building of this facility. They were sent to the contaminated area immediately after the Chernobyl disaster. From this process, here comes up what kind of nature this plant center should be. I think this is quite unique in the Ukraine and Russia because pedestrians and pedestrian clinics shall be the center of this planned clinical center, research center. So they are also shall be positioned to be leading organizations in the country. And then they planned to open this facility for the children's not only health examinations but also the preventive medical care. And then decided to aim this for, it's not only for the Chernobyl, but also rural. The accident, as you know, happened too, and there were exposed children at the time. So the center shall take the central roles and be a leading institution in the country. Okay, going back to the Chernobyl children programs, that shall be linked with the local programs of the residential areas activities, and then also taking the initiatives in that context. So child and mother always be paired up. So not only looking at the child, if they need to be looked at by the doctor as a pair, and if they need to stay in the hotel, they should. And if it is necessary, they stay in the hospital for a few weeks for physical checkups. And if it is essential, father of the child is also forced to stay in the hospital for the physical checkups. And then other education programs by the child nurses and the teachers also provided. At the same time, the other doctors from other areas, not only pediatricians, comes to look at the children and their parents. For the medical doctors groups in the region, they provide certain kind of guidebooks. That's included the basic methodologies of the diagnosing and the medical treatment and preventive measures. There are some kind of cardiovascular side of disease or some genetic sickness, etc. The guide will categorizing into these categories, and so they just put what's a primary diagnosis or primary examination and what is secondary and thirdly. I think Japan are doing the same. And then they have a certain period of time. Every period of time, they have regular issuing this kind of regular guidebooks. Okay, now the basic plan, the basic ideologies about enhancement of the children's health who are living in the contamination area. They put into the three groups. And the first group is the healthy children, and second group is healthy children having risks of chronic illness, and those third who already be identified with the patient of the critical illness. Then the secondly, they have integrated utilization of the medical, psychological, educational, and social rehabilitation programs. Anyway, at the time of the Soviet Union time, the labor organizations had a lot of rehabilitation programs that throughout the nation. So they can reuse this kind of facilities, whatever. They can utilize this kind of, the legacy of Soviet Union can be used to enhance children's health conditions. This is the example of Bryansk, which was the, I think I've heard about this, that symposium in last year. So they said they do monitoring of children's health conditions, and the first step is kind of screening. That is kind of overall evaluation of the health conditions, and second, in-depth diagnosis and primary check of the illness that will be first diagnosed. And then it was a time of 25 or the one quarter of the century after the 2011, after the Chernobyl accident. So then about 97% of children joined the monitoring, the medical examinations. And after this first monitoring physical examinations, the secondary examinations, there will be a lot other more expert or the specific focal examination that include the ultrasonic examination and whole body counters and other like the blood testing, urine testing, and those other doctors from other areas, from the endocrinologist and an oncologist, they will come and check. And for the rehabilitation, and also into the divided into the first groups, and they stay more than 2 months at the rehabilitation centers or whatever recreation center that they can use and available. And second group is the children with the higher potential risk of chronic illness, and the third group is the already patient children, and they have to go to more equipped facilities to treat children. In these facilities, they have specific equipments, and they are equipped with all kind of
the machineries or the care services that they can take care of children together with their parents if necessary. So for about the this research side, what kind of things is being planned? One is the to build up the database and the filing of the database into the system. The very one very the outstanding characteristic is that this Clinical Research Center for Radioactive Protection of Children, they will be acting as the clearing house. All the database will come and together to there. So of course for the adult care there is a different facilities, but as long as they are identified children, the data will all gather to there to this plant center. I think another outstanding thing that I should remark is the last December 2012 there was the revised version of the Russian law was established. It says that the health conditions and their changes of the discrete citizens exposed to radioactive rays result of Chernobyl disaster, first, second, and third generations shall be included in the National Radiation Epidemiological Registry. So before they said for the generations or the for the future generations, but here this clearly stated that how until when, so at least to the third in the future generation in the future to be registered. Then what is the cohorts? What kind of the methodology they should take to do the research and study? The children who were born before, already children when the disaster happened, the children, and particularly they are affected by the radioactive iodine that time, and they continued to stay there or to the moved from the 30 kilometers exclusion zone. And then another group is the children influenced by the radiation in their mother's womb, the fetus. And then also the children of Chernobyl disaster cleaners. These are the workers who cleaned up the Chernobyl aftermath. Then the generations of children who were born from radiation-affected parents. Of course, that radiation-affected parents means that the parents, adults who were there, couple who were there at the time of disaster, or who just soon after keep on living in the contaminated area. In Russia, the registry of the children that are being exposed, some paper says that only the children of the nuclear accident workers are being registered. That is wrong. They do have the registry of children in these categories, other categories too. And here, not only the children who were who were child at the time of the disaster, but now we have more children who are born afterwards. So I can show you the entire Russia and registered individuals. So these are the rate of the occurrence or the identified confirmation or diagnosed as the sickness. So when we look at all this, I don't really think that the entire Russian condition is that idealistic, and actually the number is increasing among children. The diagnosed sickness is increasing. But of course, the children, one way or the other, through their parents or by themselves, their occurrence of the sickness is much more than that. And of course, we have to take into the consideration how their parents been exposed to the radiation that time or afterwards. And you see this next one, is there are 3 bars, have kind of a blue one, and that is the children of the nuclear power plant site cleaning workers. And then middle, the reddish or the violet purple color is the children, those who evacuated from 30 kilometers down, and the children living in the radiation contaminated area, that is the ivory color. And you see from 2001 and 2011, just a little bit decrease can be shown in the A and B. However, in the category of C, you don't really see that much decrease in the numbers. I see the number of children here. As of the January 1st of last year, 2012, about 100,000 children has been identified. But soon after, immediately after the disaster, it was about 180,000 children. You see this note, malignant neoplasm of individual co-host. So now the next one. Here you see it is not that high among like a general public children, but if you see the children of the workers and those who evacuated from within 30 kilometers zone, it's kind of high. Then also chromosome and disorders at the same time, the chromosome and the distortion of the disorders. Then we look at this, what we can see, the comparing to other general illness that the children tend to have, that's these illness is much higher. I would say the average dose exposed by the nuclear power plant workers is the adult is about the 87 workers, 92 millisievert, and that's went up to like 120 millisievert after the disaster. And you can see Russian National Report in more detail the every year statistics of this exposure level. These workers who are engaged in the disposal of aftermath themselves have the very high risks at the same time, as well as their children. This is the picture of the center. They are not staff. These are the mother and children who are staying center. They're patients, so they're under. The third from the right, the back low, is the head of the center. Next week, 24th of October, they will be having a symposium. Of course, I will be attending. Every 5 years, they have their own symposium they organize independently. But after the quarter of century of Chernobyl, they will have this kind of seminar symposium as a part of Russian scientific communities conference. And this year's theme is the first and second generation's health conditions, and they will look into that nature and the characteristics. That's the subject. I still do not know what the report will be or the contents of that will be. Of course, I will be there and I will be making the presentation of Fukushima public health management surveys, KKK's programs, the Dr. Taisei Nomura, the radioactive radiation genetic study area. That is really a great professor, the researcher in that area, will be going with me. Thank you very much.
Under the current survey and Fukushima, for instance, thyroid survey, this is conducted only within Fukushima, and the duration of the survey is sporadic. Sometimes it is conducted for 2 years, and some other times it's conducted for 5 years. It's totally insufficient. Hematological studies are really insufficient in terms of the target population. Only limited people can be the subject of those studies. However, Russian, such as Ukraine and Belarus, although it took a long time, but in a very diversified health studies have been conducted. For this matter, can I ask Ms. Angelica, as well as Dr. Beverstock, to share your insights, because there is the EU project ARCH, or ARCH in short, is ongoing. Therefore, if you touch upon this project, it's really appreciated.
Yes, I will make it short because Mrs. Oh, I forgot your name. Mrs. Yoshida made a very good presentation of the system in Russia, and she talked about a lot of things we would like to have here in Fukushima and in the Fukushima prefecture too, but that you do not have at all, because your politicians just say, look at the thyroids and that's enough. And you all know that isn't enough at all. So I just want to make very few comments what should be looked at and what should be registered. I don't know if there is a registry for cancer, for stillbirth, and for malformation, for congenital malformations over all Japan or in the districts. And if it hasn't set up yet, one should start with this, and you will need a lot of epidemiologic works to really understand what's happened or what doesn't happen at all. So this would be one of the first recommendation that I would like to give to you. And then I would like to say that what we see in Russia as a system, as a control system, is good. And you should just see what you can transfer to your system here. Your system of medical services is different than from Russia in that days. You have a mixture, as I understood, between insurance and private system, and one should have to look where you can put some of the parts into your system. If you want to start with the second screening a very easy screening method, then just all the children that are looked on the thyroid, you could look on their blood, and you could look if there are immune deficiencies or not. This is very, very easy. You just look at the blood, you look at the different shades of the white blood cells, and it's easy, and I think it's cheap, and you have to, this is what I want to recommend, that you say to the government, we need this now, and we want to start it right now, and no excuse at all. It's very, very easy. Then I think for the long term you have to look for, of course, not only thyroid cancers but also other cancers. You should always could repeat what the categories are in Belarus or in Russia. The categories of people to look at and put in a control system are the cleanup workers, which are not looked at all here. You have the children and you have the grown-ups, and you have to include all people. And I think there is no excuse from the government to say, oh, we have the system of subcontracting, and it's not possible. This is, for a foreigner like me, it seems so stupid. This excuse, we have subcontractors, and these people cannot be examined and cannot put in a control system. This is the work of the government. They could have the industry to pay for it. The industry wanted nuclear power plants, so this is what Katsumi said before. It's politics and it's industry that put barriers, that these things are not done, and you doctors know, and we doctors know what has to be done. And then I want to say something. I heard in the last days that very few doctors are reasonably educated in the health effects of radiation. This is the same in Germany. We are not better. And I think the doctors should, with doing their work, get a good education and help and support to be educated, to do the work they want to do. And not say, oh, no, this is not only this is only thyroid and not the other things we want to know. This is so stupid. It seems so stupid for me. So these are the things I would like to recommend you. Thank you very much.
Very much. Can you add something? A kind of supplemental information? As to the category of statistics, we followed the ICD-10. So we followed the ICD-10 as to the classification of the studies. And this center has a very good relationships with the Chernobyl Alliance. In that sense, the children of the decontamination workers and for example, we got a phone call from the decontamination worker for the medical examination. However, the problem is that already 25 years have passed. As to the registry, it can cover the third generation from now on. However, the center itself is forced to scale down. In addition to that, pediatricians, doctors do not get good salaries and wages. Therefore, not so many residents want to be a pediatrician, and that is a problem. So there are many issues for the center, but please understand that we have made an all-out effort, and we will do that. And we'd like to learn as many lessons as possible from you, because we want to reflect those good best practices to the Fukushima. Thank you very much, though, for sharing your thoughts and insights.
Arch project. Is it switched on? This is, well, some of us have been very concerned for a long time that although we know quite a lot about the risks from exposure to ionizing radiation, we know it mostly about acute exposures that occur over a very short period of time, maybe the atomic bomb survivors, but also in medical applications of radiation. Whereas nuclear accidents provide exposure over several years to a very complex mix of radiation, internal and external, different radionuclides. And it's quite a different thing from what we know about. So we can't be sure to say that, well, we know everything we need to know about the risks of radiation. So in about 2007, the European Commission set up what they call, well, what we eventually called the ARCH project. And ARCH stands for Agenda for Research on Chernobyl Health. And the question that the Commission wanted answered was, even 25 years after the accident, is it possible, or 20 years after the accident, is it possible to learn any more? And many of us thought instinctively, yes, there must be, because the concentration of research after the Chernobyl accident has been predominantly on the thyroid cancer. And other things have been received very, very much less attention. So a project was set up with 4 scientists. I was one of them. Elizabeth Cardis, I'm sure you know, Alsra Kesmanini and Dilwyn Williams were the core group, and we recruited several advisors and people to help us. And basically, we went through all the possibilities, what could be studied, what diseases could be studied, and how feasible was it to do it 20 years after the accident, because some cases it is not that easy. And we provided a report by the year 2010 to the European Commission, and it was in 2 parts. There was a main recommendation, and I want really to concentrate on that. And the main recommendation was that a lifespan study involving existing cohorts, and they are mainly liquidators or cleanup workers, which are being studied under different conditions in 3 different countries, or in fact in more than 3 different countries. We suggested that these could be amalgamated and under a single study provide a very powerful epidemiological resource. Now that would be at least 600,000 people in that study. And I think that at first the Commission did not expect that they might be called upon to set up something which was obviously going to cost quite a considerable sum of money. But they asked an independent group of scientists to review this particular recommendation, and that was done, I think, in 2011, and they gave very strong approval. And so last year, the Commission, this year, the Commission finally decided to call for applications for money to set up what they called a tripartite study. Now, we insisted in our recommendation that this had to involve the United States and Japan and the European Commission. So they specified that it should be the 3 countries involved. And the proposal that actually was supported was put forward by the International Agency for Cancer Research. They will be the coordinators of this new project. And that will start next month. Well, that was the last I'd heard. I haven't been able to get any more details about it. But the first phase of this project will be to look into how to do this. What work needs to be done to bring these 3 studies under one umbrella. Well, as I say, there's more than 3 studies, all under one umbrella to be studied in a consistent and comparable manner. So it's a big challenge. It's going to cost a considerable sum of money, but we feel that it's very much worth doing. And well, we can only wait and see what the result is. But This will be a purely epidemiological study. I should stress that. This will not involve medical examinations of individuals. It will be purely epidemiological along the lines of the RERF epidemiological study. Thank you.
Very much. From now on, I'd like to open the floor for free discussion. I know Japanese people are very much concerned about the studies in Fukushima. Therefore, I expect some of you may raise those concerns. I see 3 people shooting up their hands. First of all, Dr. Matsui, please. Thank you very much. I'm Esuke Matsui. I'm advisor for Futaba Town, and I have assumed this position for almost 2 years, during which I have associated with many Futaba community people, and I try to find how much suffering they have incurred. Recently, together with Mr. and Mrs. Sebastian, I've been to Belarus and Ukraine to study the situation over there, and I'm an MD doctor. I was belonging to the radiation department of Gifu University, focusing on respiratory diseases such as the early detection of lung cancer. This has been my focus area so far. However, I realized that how we can prevent disease before developing it, and how we can save people's lives before dying. And there is the first prevention and secondary prevention. The first primary prevention is how much we can protect children from hazards such as radiation. This is very important as a HCP or healthcare professional. And this requires the nationwide project. Therefore, the town of Futaba alone cannot do this because Futaba is just a small town in Fukushima Prefecture. However, Fukushima is only one town outside of Fukushima, but there is a pressure applied to Futaba town go back to Fukushima. However, relatively speaking, radiation level is low, and there are many people of this community live in different places to avoid radiation. Therefore, we have to establish a system to protect these people from radiation. And I believe this is a mission of our generation for the next generations onward. And then with this in our concept, we have to think about screening, which is the secondary prevention. Maybe a certain disease has already developed, but how we can detect it as early as possible. This is the concept of secondary prevention. The primary prevention is the most important. That is how much we can protect people from radiation. The most urgent issue for us is to reflect desire of the community people. Especially, we have to reflect the voices of children into the screening system. When I've been to Belarus and Ukraine, it's not about small increase of the thyroid cancer. You can find the different factor and the report. What's happening on the field is different. For example, brain tumor children or neurosurgery children doctor. I have met with several dozens of doctors specialized in neurosurgery, and they said the actual situation is different. I have also seen the ophthalmology doctors, and they said that there are cataract happening to children, and fundus examination is given to children, and they said that they have seen the abnormal vessels. There is the angiogenesis at the fundus at the retina. Therefore, after long term, there should be the higher instance of type 1 diabetes. Therefore, it's not only about carcinoma, but also the non-carcinoma diseases, findings, and expertise are accumulated more and more. So we have to leverage on that to think about Japan, what we should do. If we look at only Fukushima Medical University focusing only thyroid cancer, if screening is done in such a way, it's really problematic, and the screening system itself it's already a problem because access to the own data of medical status is very difficult. It's not good. In addition to that, if the second opinion is sought after by a patient, it should be allowed in a casual manner. such an environment should be ensured. In addition to that, those who are away from Fukushima, they have to be casually able to drop at the doctor to ask for screening and treatment for free. Evacuees should survive, and they have to have a pride and dignity as Fukushimans. Although they may away from Fukushima, but they have to be able to be proud of being Fukushimans. And for those people, we have to ensure free examination, free screening, free treatment. I know I have to stop here, but I have a say to share with you because I want to know what's happening in Fukushima, because everything is left to Fukushima Medical University. No, the MTLW, the Ministry of the Health, Labor and Welfare, should be the forefront to do this, because there isn't a contract between the LHW and IAEA, and the WHO cannot do anything for radiation issues, and because of that, the MHLW is in a very difficult situation. However, I don't know why, but the IAEA and the Fukushima Medical University has a contractual agreement, and this is determined at the cabinet meeting. And when we disclose that data, but IAEA said that this is a confidential data, therefore some of the data is withheld from the public, and this withholding closure is included in the contract between the IAEA and the Medical University of Fukushima, and it should be rectified. Square and the IAEA, this is directly underneath the Security Council of the UN, and they try to hide everything as much as possible. It's very typical to the IAEA. Therefore, we have to be independent from the IAEA. And I know that this meeting in October 2 years ago was motivated by that situation. Therefore, please reflect what happened. The collusive relationships with the IAEA, we have to cut it out because we have to protect the dignity of our children as well as the Fukushima people. And it can be started with the good screening and examination systems that direct to make an all-out effort for residents solely for occupying the scene for a long time. But I believe, as a foundation, I believe that is the most important thing, and we can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think the basic issues are, as Dr. Matsui stated. There was someone else with your hands raised. I have a question from a citizen's perspective. And a statement. Actually, it was already 6 months, half a year past when a full-fledged health survey started, including the issue of radiation. I'm wondering if that is really intentional that it was so late, because with some of the particles have very short half-life, and that is why I believe that the government was so late in beginning the health survey, full-fledged health survey, because cesium-137 has a very short half-life. Yes. Well, I know the effect of the iode, that its half-life is 8 days only. So that is why I have made the request to the Fukushima Prefecture and to TEPCO and to the commission responsible within the Japanese government, make that request to start the survey. And also, Mr. Fukuyama, who was the cabinet secretary, I've repeatedly requested that we need to undertake the survey and study before there is still the iode in present. I did that. I made a request to the Fukushima Prefecture as well. I requested how many devices are available in Japan, how many can we obtain from other countries. And that is why I'm extremely vexed and angry about this. But however, these people have always said yes to me, but have not undertaken the survey. That has been the case. There are so many adults, most of the adults in Fukushima Prefecture are not undergoing survey, and not entirety of the children's population have undergone survey as well. I want you to know the reality in Fukushima. I have had many negotiations and discussions. FMU, the Fukushima Medical University, is creating a new word, but that it should not be the priority. The priority should be to prevent the increase of number of patients, so that such word is not necessary. And that is something that I've requested to the Fukushima Prefecture. What is important is preventive actions. And I warned them that you will be sued in the future by the children who will develop illnesses, but that has not been done unnecessary. Therefore, their priority is to make FMU into the world's leading, Japanese leading scientific research center. Of course, I disagree with that. If there is no victims of irradiation, we won't need such research center. 28 million or so are paid from TEPCO for the construction of this additional ward in FMU. So the reality is that people have wrong sense of priority. That why the word, the new word, impeccable word, will be built. But I believe that is one creating additional excuse so that the government's encouragement of increasing the number of returnees to Fukushima Prefecture will be supported, and that measure and that policy will be in line with this construction of the new ward, because there will be new inpatients going into the ward. It will be an excuse so that we will have all the fields and all the foundations ready. So in order to utilize radioactivity effectively, so therefore the sense of priority of the leaders of Fukushima is crazy and unbelievable. So therefore I continue to voice my sense of urgency to need to alienate people from irradiation. Kawanushi-san, Ito-san, I think you have comments as well. I'm a doctor in a Saitama hospital. And I'm also part of activism, of anti-nuclear activism over the past 10 years or more. And I'm also involved in various activities, for example, support of the evacuated people and people who evacuated to the Saitama arena, because a great number of people evacuated from Fukushima to Saitama. I am also the head director of the health management or health survey center in Saitama, and so I've understood much from this situation. Actually, if you look at the history of Japanese medical practice, there has never been any massive or overall research and survey of the population, target population, in case of such large-scale disasters or accidents. So what is important is to truly cover the entire population and track them annually on a annually. And keep that in a database. Otherwise, we will not understand the overall impact of such accident. Similar activity has to be undertaken for Fukushima as well. So my demand is that such complete examination should take place. And some people tend to think that the doctors know everything, but that is not the case. If the doctors cannot come up with the right name of the illness when the patient comes, then he fails to be the doctor. For example, a woman who's in her 30s, who comes and claims that she gets tired very easily, but that patient could go visit all the departments of a hospital. Let's check the thyroid, for example. And although she's only in her 30s, maybe they will send her to the that maybe it's old age or mental disease or depression. Actually, that person was irradiated. A typical syndrome of a irradiated patient is that the fatigue comes very easily. A sudden fatigue is quite common. So if children repeat that he or she gets very tired, what is important is that we have to first doubt that it might be radiation, especially after 2011, and we have to keep that in mind. So from the clinical symptoms, it is important to think of the possibility of irradiation as a possible cause, and that such education must be implemented to doctors, hospital. If such understanding is not widespread, then we have to demand that the government implements that. My name is Kawane from the Citizens Research Center for Internal Radiation. I have a brochure that I brought with me. This March, I visited with Mika Noro to Belarus. And I studied about the diagnosis and treatment of thyroid cancer there. As the former mayor of Taba said, I also believe that what's important is to evacuate the residents from the high radiation dose area. This morning we were talking about 100 millisievert, but we did not really talk about what would be the starting point of evacuation of residents. In case of Belarus, scientists say that over 1 millisievert residents should be evacuated. That has been the claims of scientists, and with the negotiation with the government finally agreed to 5 millisievert as the lower threshold. In Japan, in the contrary, the government's trying to return people at 20 millisievert. And despite this very situation full of concern, we were not able to have a thorough discussion about this morning, and I feel that it's a pity. Additionally, the radiation dose of Belarus is 0.2 millisievert. 0.2 millisievert in Belarus today is the standard for determining a town that should be completely vacated of the population. However, in Japan, that might be a level of decontamination efforts, but decontamination effort in reality is just turning upside down the soil, the surface soil with a deeper soil. But actually in Belarus, that is the level for decision of completely discontinuing a village or municipalities. Cesium-137 in case of Japan, 40,000 meters is designated as a radiation control zone. However, in Belarus, that is not the case. 320,000 meters is designated as a controlled area, and there are crops that are prohibited from growing in the area. A new construction is prohibited as well. So that is a 370,000 becquerel per square meters. In case of the same cesium-137, the Japanese government claims that the air dose of the area with 370,000 becquerel per square meter is only 0.13 millisievert, and 0.13 millisievert area we can find an area in Tokyo as well. So you can clearly see the difference in the measures and the countermeasures of the Japanese government and the Belarus government. We were talking about the hypothetical discussions in Japan only. We are not really looking at the real radiation level and the the air dose level, the soil radiation level, contamination level at site. What needs to be fundamentally changed in Japan is that many discussions that are completely unfunded are ongoing. There was already a decision of 0.6 microsievert per hour. That was a threshold, which would calculate to 1.3 millisievert per 3 months. And if we just divide 1.3 sievert microsievert, then per hour, then it would be 0.6 microsievert. But this is completely erroneous. Because the basis of the calculation of this limit is for radiologists, for example, who have a very sporadic irradiation from X-rays, and that should not be applied to the ordinary resident who are always exposed. We have another threshold, which is 4 becquerel per square meters, which is and 40,000 square meters area of control zone. And in this area, it should be impossible to build a new school or open or operate a school. But that is not the case. And there are many areas in Tohoku area, in near Tokyo and in northern area, that have this level of contamination. But despite that, there are schools operating and children playing outside and having barbecue parties outside as well. The basis of a discussion on decision on evacuation and studying from international references of the case of Belarus and Ukraine is not undertaking in Japan at all, and this is something that needs to be fundamentally changed. Mr. Ito, or Miss Ito, sorry. Having heard what Kawane-san have to say, maybe what I have to say is somewhat related to what he had to say. The reality of Fukushima is so horrifying that when we think about the children there, we tend to focus only on Fukushima situation as well. But when we think about radiation, it does not know any prefectural boundaries. Someone from Miyagi earlier mentioned we have to look at Miyagi, we have to think about Tochigi prefecture. Actually, in Kanto, there are so many areas with higher radiation level than in Fukushima prefecture, but nothing is done in these areas. So the only thing that can be done is an initiative undertaken by citizens proactively. On the citizens level, there are various actions. For example, ultrasound test and screening that is organized by the citizens themselves, inviting the doctors and specialists. That is because the government is doing nothing about this. That the parents actually started such initiative of ultrasound screening. Of course, I'm not saying that the measures are complete in Fukushima. The Fukushima's KKK survey, the health management survey, is also problematic. But what I'd like to say is that we should not limit our vision to only what goes on within the Fukushima prefecture. We need to look at the surrounding contaminated area. We need to think of this issue as a problem of the areas contaminated surrounding the nuclear power plant. We do have legal basis as well, and with which we can clarify the responsibility of the government. We have to make sure that the limitations are not created by the Fukushima medical universities. Again, we should not just focus on Fukushima prefecture when we think about irradiation of children.
Some people who have to go back to Fukushima tonight, so we will take a little break now. It's 6 o'clock now, so we will take 10 minutes break. But doctors from Fukushima, you have to say last word before you leave? Yes. 2 weeks ago, Shinichi Suzuki, at the seminar for the ultrasonic graphic examination skill learning, I understood how this kind of seminars for the doctor happening in Fukushima, and I asked what happened to what kind of seminars has been provided to other countries. Then Dr. Suzuki said, I'm only concerned about Fukushima prefecture, and other prefectures will take care of themselves. So I really felt that other prefectures have to take care of themselves. So I think the government shall take the guiding roles in this case, because even in Fukushima we have lack of doctors, and I know overall doctor shortage is happening elsewhere. So I think that we will have to discuss about this with the people from other prefectures. Thank you. Okay, we will. Okay, one more person. Thank you very much for very lively discussions. I really appreciate. As spoken before, not only thyroid cancer, as Dr. Tsuda or other doctors mentioned about the fatigue. I feel looking around me, this began to spread out in the people in the Fukushima. However, there is no initiative of conducting general blood testing or urine testing. Even among the students, when they are really, really suffering from fatigue and tiredness, they tend not to go to see doctors. Somebody said not going to, because they do not want to go to doctors or the big medical institutions, because they do not want to be led to the wrong way. So I think it's so important for us to how we can prepare good environment, natural environment for them for relaxation. And with your student, you will go out of this place and then have relaxation, relaxed place, and be under the clean air. They said, but the prefecture says okay, that we are safe. So I don't want to go to see doctors. I don't have to go there. So these anxieties, that they still have certain level of anxieties and fear that they have. They really want to feel secured, or some kind of security and peace and safety. So I think one thing of what I can do is to speak out to our prefectural level medical doctors association about my concern. Thank you very much. Okay, I will meet you back here at the 6:15.